What if everything you thought you knew about the world, I mean, from human origins to the very moon in the sky, what if it was all based on, like, a carefully constructed illusion?
That's a heck of a starting point. It immediately makes you question, well, everything, suggesting there are hidden layers to reality we just don't normally see.
Absolutely. And today we're doing a deep dive into a stack of sources that definitely lean into challenging those assumptions. We're exploring claims of ancient extraterrestrial intervention, hidden Earth civilizations, even technological control systems may be operating just beyond our perception.
And the main material for today comes mostly from excerpts of something called the Lacerta Interviews, specifically an archived conversation found on a website, asklacerta.com.
Right. In this source, it presents itself as a direct communication. With a self-described female reptilian being named Lacerta, she claims she's sharing the truth from her ancient reptilian race, supposedly living secretly right here on Earth.
Now, we absolutely have to stress this up front. The source material itself positions these files firmly in the realm of UFO mythology and conspiracy theories. We're looking at a very specific, very alternative narrative here.
Exactly. That's the mission. To unpack the honestly fascinating claims made in this source, pull out the key bits of information it presents, and just understand the unique story it's telling about Earth's hidden realities.
We want to see what we can learn from really digging into this specific body of thought. But always remembering we are exploring the ideas and the claims within this material.
Yeah.
We're not validating them as fact.
Yeah, this deep dive is for you, for anyone who's curious about these alternative narratives, how different bits of info might connect, pushing beyond the usual boundaries, you know, without you having to wade through all the raw stuff yourself.
Okay, so let's dive in. The central figure in the source, Lacerta. She introduces herself as this reptilian being, sharing what she calls highly restricted information from her species' viewpoint. And right off the bat, she talks about human programming and our slow evolution.
And she mentions recognizing the listener's identification sequence from before, like they've talked previously.
Apparently so, yes. It suggests a history of communication crossing these perceived boundaries. Then she introduces the core figures in her account. The Elohim, or as she specifically calls them, the Illojim.
The Illojim. Okay, and according to Lacerta, these were what, advanced ETs who came here?
Exactly, an advanced extraterrestrial species. And their role, according to her, was quite specific and frankly pretty unsettling. Their project, creating humans as a working species.
Wait, not natural evolution, like manufacturing.
That's the claim, a deliberate act. She says they did it by manipulating existing primate DNA and then mixing it with their own genetics.
Okay, wow. And they didn't show up saying, hi, we're genetic engineers.
No, the source claims they presented themselves to our primitive ancestors as gods. Because they were so technologically advanced, it was easy to appear divine.
So just using tech to look like gods.
That's the idea. Lacerta claims they manipulated and destroyed, set conflicts in motion that she says are still echoing today, and then, allegedly, they just abandoned their creation.
Yeah.
Humans. Left us with confusion and false histories.
And this is where that resentment comes in, the feeling the listener picked up on. Her species feels this towards the Illojim.
Very strongly, according to the source. The reptilians apparently resent that the Illojim came to their planet, Earth, made a new species us that then spread everywhere, changed the planet's development.
And implanted false religions.
Yes, religions that distort reality, according to Lacerta. She claims her kind has basically been forced into hiding on their own world because of all this interference.
So the core claim is just radical. Humans weren't natural. We were manufactured as tools and then just left behind. What's fascinating is it's not just a different origin story. It's one rooted in like purpose-built creation, then neglect, and ongoing problems because of it.
That whole framing really sets the stage for everything else the source gets into. It positions humanity not as the peak of life here, but as, well, a project that kind of went sideways from both the native species view and maybe even the creators.
Speaking of different views, the listener in the source mentioned some human researchers we know, David Icke and Zecharia Sitchin. What's Lacerta's take on their work in this material?
Yes. Her view is quite specific. She says they glimpsed fragments of truth, but their overall understanding is significantly flawed.
Flawed how, exactly? What's wrong with Sitchin, according to her?
She claims Sitchin got closer on the ET influence part, but his translations apparently have numerous errors, and his timeline is crunched, simplified. She even argues the Sumerian texts he used were already distortions of much older truths, so his work is like twice removed from reality.
Okay. And Icke, he talks a lot about reptilians.
Lacerta says Ick correctly identified a reptilian presence, some influence, yeah, but she claims he mixed genuine insights with what she calls paranoid fantasy and religious programming.
Paranoid fantasy.
Yeah, she critiques his idea that all reptilians are just purely evil. She argues her kind are the indigenous species here, not just some malevolent overlords, and that Ick misunderstands their complex society.
So, from this source's viewpoint, humans trying to figure this out by reading other humans interpreting distorted ancient texts. It's kind of missing the point.
That's exactly her argument. Lacerta suggests humans should be developing their blocked natural abilities instead. Things like field consciousness.
Field consciousness, what's that, like psychic stuff?
Sort of. The source describes it as a direct, non-physical awareness of energy patterns, information. Direct knowledge, basically. It's a recurring theme. Humans have these innate abilities that were deliberately shut down.
Which leads to a pretty blunt question the listener asks. Didn't the reptilians think about just getting rid of humans after the Illojim left? Exterminating us?
The source confirms, yeah, that was debated internally among them, especially, it claims, when human development, particularly around what Lacerta calls our second civilization, started bumping up against their underground territories.
So why didn't they? If we were encroaching.
Lacerta puts it down to a complex ethical framework. They apparently recognized humans had developed consciousness, even though we were creations, and saw us as victims of the Illojim too.
And practical reasons, too.
Right. Concerns about the massive damage a planetary conflict would do to Earth's biosphere, which is their home too, remember? So she says they chose observation, some limited intervention, maybe occasional guidance.
But the source does admit some conflicts happen, like dragon myths.
Yes, limited conflicts when humans crossed boundaries or were maybe guided by other interfering groups. That's where some human legends of dragon slayers supposedly come from. And Lacerta does note that some reptilian factions still argue for more aggressive solutions today, especially with modern human tech threatening the planet.
This paints a picture of Earth history just filled with ancient alien conflict. Were the reptilians actually at war with the Illojim directly?
Lacerta confirms direct conflicts, yeah. Though she says war, as we understand it, doesn't quite capture fights between beings that advanced. She talks about the most significant conflict happening about 65 million years ago, our time.
Wait a minute, 65 million years? Isn't that the asteroid, the dinosaur extinction event?
According to this source, no, not a natural asteroid. Lacerta claims the Illojim, with some allies, used an incredibly advanced weapon, something affecting field resonance, that energy vibration of reality concept again.
A field resonance weapon.
Yeah, immense power. She claims it was designed specifically to wipe out her species and the large saurians dominating the surface back then. A targeted extinction event, from her perspective.
And the reptilians survived.
How?
By going underground.
Exactly. The source says they retreated deep underground, used shielding tech, and basically adapted to living beneath the surface while mammals evolved up top, filling the empty ecological slots.
Were there later clashes?
After the big one?
Lacerta describes later run-ins, yeah. During the time, the Illojim were actually creating humans, not open warfare, more like strategic maneuvers and counteractions. And here's a key bit. She claims her kind interfered with some of the Illojim's genetic programs while they were making us.
Interfered how? What did they do?
They apparently influenced the human design to give us certain latent abilities that the Illojim actually wanted suppressed. This ties into that figure known in human texts as Enki.
Ah, right. The listener asked about Enki. Did the reptilians work with him?
Lacerta describes Enki as an Illojim leader who seemed to have ethical concerns about the whole human project. She claims her kind managed to establish limited field communication, that non-physical energy chat, with this Illojim faction, sharing ideas about consciousness.
And this chat influenced our design.
That's the claim. The modifications indirectly influenced apparently included enhanced field sensitivity pathways in our brains, psychic awareness, spiritual potential. The Illojim majority supposedly wanted these abilities clamped down hard, fearing we'd become conscious and rebellious workers.
So they dampened the abilities, but didn't fully remove them because of Enki.
Seems to be the idea, yes. Leaving humans in this kind of frustrating middle state.
Sensing there's more, but blocked from really accessing or using it. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a fascinating claim, that our own design reflects ancient fights over our potential. Okay, let's unpack this. This whole history, defined by alien meddling and conflict stretching back millions of years. What does the source say this means for us right now?
Well, according to the source, it suggests that what we think of as human potential or human limitation might actually be the result of deliberate design choices and interference, not just pure natural evolution. It completely reframes human history. We're not just on our own linear path, we're maybe a byproduct of these huge cosmic events and agendas that are still playing out.
Which brings us right to the idea of hidden structures and systems still operating today. The listener asks about the Black Knight satellite, that weird object people track.
Right. The source claims that object, the Black Knight, is ancient tech, but it's not Illojim tech. It was supposedly placed there by contracted observers.
Contracted observers, like neutral parties.
That's how she describes them. Third parties monitoring Earth for various advanced civilizations. Lacerta claims it's been up there about 13,000 years, and it uses the moon to hide and interface, which is why it sometimes seems to appear from there.
So it's not part of the original creator's setup.
No, according to the source. The Illojim monitoring network was apparently way more sophisticated, totally undetectable by us now. It supposedly uses field resonance nodes, deep underground and underwater, and it monitors consciousness patterns, not just physical stuff.
Consciousness patterns. Wow. And Lacerta adds that human authorities know about some of this non-human tech.
Yeah, like the Black Knight. But they compartmentalize the info, only release bits and pieces or mischaracterize it. Standard procedure, maybe.
Okay, then the listener brings up the moon itself. And the source makes some really controversial claims about the moon, which the reptilians call SIRS.
Yes, SARS. And this is probably one of the source's most radical claims. The moon. It's not natural. Lacerta states it was moved into Earth orbit about 113 million years ago.
Moved? By who?
By a much older species she calls the precursors. They were apparently involved in massive solar system engineering projects. Moving moons around was part of their toolkit, it seems.
And putting the moon here had huge effects on Earth.
Oh, yeah. The source claims its gravitational arrival caused massive geological upheaval. Think great floods and cataclysms from our myths and geology. It's supposedly destroyed ancient reptilian surface structures that existed before it arrived.
Okay, besides stabilizing the axis and tides, what else does the source claim the moon does?
Right, here's where it gets really wild. The source claims the moon is fundamentally an enormous field resonance amplifier, a piece of consciousness
This technology.
And Lacerta states it's partially hollow, contains artificial structures inside, and that the Black Knight satellite interfaces with it somehow.
Okay, deep breath. Then comes what Lacerta calls the most restricted information. The moon's link to soul recycling. The reincarnation cycle.
Yes, Lacerta confirms a direct connection there. She claims this function was added or modified about 18,000 years ago by yet another group of entities, not the Illojim, not the precursors. The moon's field, she says, creates a containment and redirect system for consciousness energy souls after physical death.
She actually calls it a soul net, or a frequency fence.
That's exactly the term used in the source, a frequency fence, or net. It supposedly intercepts human consciousness during the death transition. The consciousness gets drawn into the lunar field, processed memories filtered or wiped, and then redirected back to Earth for reincarnation.
And the purpose of this system, according to the source,
primarily consciousness energy harvesting, and also maintaining specific development parameters for humanity, keeping us in a certain box, maybe. Lacerta notes her species isn't affected, their consciousness signature doesn't match the fence frequency.
harvesting consciousness energy. That is an incredibly heavy claim. Does the source offer any way out? Can a human consciousness escape this moon trap?
It explicitly says yes, the potential is there. For any consciousness with sufficient awareness, the trap, she claims, works because most humans are unaware it even exists. That's the default state, according to her.
So how do you become aware enough? How do you escape?
First step, according to the source, is just recognizing the process might be happening, like the listener asking about it. Then, cultivating high-frequency states during life, she mentions meditation, specifically without religious dogma attached. And crucially, having clear intent during the death transition. Knowing about the field fence is apparently key to developing the frequency to just pass through it.
And if you manage that, what happens then, according to the source?
A true transition. To higher realms, apparently. You regain full memory, cosmic knowledge, freedom from limiting beliefs. You get to choose your next experiences, access wider reality, connect with other consciousness. Full freedom.
Is easy.
She does warn there might be energetic guardians within the system trying to pull you back or redirect you. But she also claims more humans are managing to bypass it lately, maybe because the planet's overall frequency is rising.
So this source suggests we weren't just maybe created for a purpose, but our afterlife, our transition, is potentially managed by advanced tech. How? How might just knowing about this potential system change how you look at life and death? It raises a huge question. What if consciousness isn't just biological, but it's treated like an energy resource, something to be managed, maybe even farmed?
It completely reframes the stakes, doesn't it? It suggests the journey of consciousness might be tangled up in non-physical tech designed for control and harvesting, not just a natural or spiritual path. It adds this layer of cosmic engineering to our most basic questions about existence.
Okay, let's shift slightly. Let's talk about specific places on Earth. The source mentions locations with special energy fields, places where Lacerta says it's easier to access these other realms or hidden systems. The listener asked about Brazil.
Right. Lacerta lists several spots in Brazil. Serra do Roncador, she calls that the most powerful, talks about ancient underground chambers built by earlier civilizations, rare minerals, deep indigenous knowledge tied to it.
What else?
The meeting point of the Rio Negro and the Amazon rivers, supposedly a natural energy vortex, indigenous portal legends there. The Maranhão coast, underwater structures from a third human civilization that act as field amplifiers. And Foz do Iguaçu, the waterfalls, a powerful energy confluence the reptilians apparently use for meetings.
And these places are monitored, sometimes have entrances to, like, reptilian areas.
That's the claim. Monitored by human military, non-humans too, and some might contain entrances. Their effectiveness also supposedly waxes and wanes with cosmic cycles, solar activity, that kind of thing. The listener specifically asked about Chapada dos Veadeiros too.
Yes. What about that place?
Lacerta highlights that one as particularly significant. Why? Well, oldest exposed quartz crystals on the planet, she describes them as a field coherence matrix, basically natural frequency amplifiers. Also rare minerals, lithium, even a superconducting layer deep down.
Wow. Anything else?
And crucially, she claims there's an intact energy structure down there, about 1.3 kilometers deep, from the first advanced human civilization, maybe 700,000 years ago, a field stabilization node, part of a whole planetary energy network.
And reptilians are nearby, watching people who go there.
That's what the source says. Apparently, the Brazilian government is aware something's up there. Anomalous stuff happens. Meditating there supposedly helps consciousness expand. The quartz itself has a kind of teaching function. But she advises caution. The energy is intense.
This leads to a really interesting observation the listener made about meeting people in these spiritual places who feel really off, really negative or dissonant, despite talking the talk.
Ah, yes, Lacerta confirms that happens. Says these sites attract genuine seekers, absolutely, but also people looking for commercial gain, ego boosts, you know the type.
So why the disconnect? Why do they talk spiritual but feel bad?
She explains it as a mismatch between their projected image, how they want to appear, and their actual field resonance. Their energy signature, she claims, shows density. Unprocessed trauma, ego issues, deception, attachments. They apparently can't even perceive their own energetic state accurately and just use spiritual language as a kind of shield or social currency.
So the listener's bad feeling was actually their field sensitivity picking up the truth, reading the actual energy.
Precisely. Lacerta claims that ability to sense the field truth was deliberately dampened in humans to make us easier to fool and control. She contrasts it with reptilian society, where she claims such energetic deception is impossible because everyone reads everyone's field directly.
And this links back to the reptilians avoiding human crowds because of noise, right?
Exactly. Lacerta confirms that collective human brain activity, especially in cities during the day, creates this disruptive noise on the consciousness spectrum. Just chaotic thought forms messing up the energy field.
But it calms down when we sleep.
Significantly, yes. When most humans sleep, the noise drops, the collective field shifts, boundaries get more permeable, and Earth's natural rhythms become more accessible. Lacerta actually validates the listener's discovery that being awake when others sleep is better for consciousness work, enhances subtle info access, better sync with Earth rhythms. She calls the listener's finding remarkable sensitivity, meaning their abilities are less suppressed.
But flipping your sleep cycle completely? That messes with sunlight, biorhythms. That feels like a problem.
Lacerta acknowledges that, yeah. It's a valid biological concern. The source suggests a balanced approach isn't about total inversion. Maybe getting morning sun, using dawn-dusk transitions for alignment, doing the really deep, subtle work late at night, say 1 to 4 a.m., adjusting seasonally, maybe spending time in low-density nature spots periodically to recalibrate.
And she notes, field-sensitive people might need less sleep anyway.
Yeah, because they process energy more efficiently. The goal is finding a balance that works for you, not rigidly flipping your whole life upside down.
So the source suggests specific places have unique energy, but you need discernment about the people there too. And even just when you choose to be awake can affect your connection to these subtler energies. That raises a big question. How much are our daily habits, even our sleep, influenced by stuff we don't perceive? And could changing them reconnect us to something important?
It implies our consciousness is always interacting with these unseen fields. Simple choices about our daily rhythm could align us better with Earth's natural cycles, or expose us more to disruptive stuff, whether that's tech interference or just collective mental static. It makes personal routines seem potentially energetically significant.
Okay, let's talk modern interference. The listener asks about Starling, the satellite grid.
Right. Lacerta confirms, according to the source, that yes, it creates disturbance patterns, and these affect consciousness fields both human and reptilian.
How? What's the mechanism, according to her?
The source mentions a few things. Interference in the upper atmosphere where energy fields transfer, creating field fragmentation lattices.
Fragmentation lattices, like breaking up energy flow.
Yeah, patterns that disrupt smooth consciousness flow, hindering expansion, and also specific frequencies that apparently disrupt neural patterns, causing subtle cognitive interference, maybe making it harder to focus deeply.
Do the reptilians want to take it down?
There's debate among them, the source says, but the main view seems to be non-interference with human tech unless it seriously threatens the whole planet's stability. Lacerta hints maybe some unexplained failures weren't accidental, perhaps limited tests or disruptions from their side. But she stresses major intervention would only happen if the effects get really critical. She also notes that humans who are sensitive to these effects are mostly ignored or dismissed.
What about the ultimate objective of these big satellite grids? Is it just internet?
Lacerta claims the public reasons internet comms are just the surface story. The deeper aims, she lists, are first, a planetary surveillance and control grid. Second, a framework for planetary defense, specifically watching for non-human craft. And third, known only to a few involved, is consciousness field manipulation.
Consciousness manipulation. How?
Generating specific frequencies designed to influence mass consciousness patterns. Thoughts, moods, maybe?
And who's behind that deeper goal, according to the source?
This is crucial. She claims other non-human entities are guiding certain human factions developing and deploying these systems, not the Illojim, someone else.
And their ultimate goal with this grid?
To create a comprehensive field enclosure around Earth, to keep human consciousness within certain parameters, limit outside interaction, enable mass influence or control, and basically claim technological sovereignty over Earth's whole energetic space. Lacerta says most scientists and engineers working on it have no idea about these deeper aims, and the reptilians worry about overriding natural planetary energies and the unintended side effects. Now, you asked earlier about Saturn. This leads into another pretty unsettling claim from the source.
Yeah, the source claims Saturn is a frequency transmitter. What does that mean?
According to Lacerta, this is highly restricted information even for them. She claims Saturn, the planet itself, and its huge ring system function together as a massive frequency broadcast array.
Like a giant radio tower in space.
Sort of, yeah. Generating specific, extremely low frequency patterns, ELF waves, that influence consciousness fields throughout the solar system, including Earth. It creates a kind of fundamental background resonance.
And what's the supposed effect on humans?
It reportedly strengthens our perceptual boundaries, makes it harder to access non-physical or expanded states of awareness. It also reinforces separation consciousness, feeling separate from everything, the illusion of linear time, and maybe fear-based thinking. All attributes that, according to the source, help keep our awareness contained, manageable. Maybe within that trap system we talked about.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
How does the source suggest dealing with that influence?
A few ways. Cultivating awareness during times when Saturn's influence might be less direct. Based on orbital cycles, you'd have to track that. Working with specific crystals known for frequency stuff, like quartz or obsidian. And using certain sound practices, she specifically mentions 741 hertz as a frequency that can help harmonize or counteract it. This info is sensitive, she repeats, because it connects to these fundamental cosmic-level control systems. Lacerta notes that the listener even asking about it suggests they're already picking up on this subtle influence.
And the hexagon, that giant storm shape at Saturn's pole.
Lacerta says forget storm. She calls it a visible manifestation of an enormous energy technology, not natural meteorology. Its perfect geometric shape, the hexagon, its sheer persistence, it defies conventional physics, according to the source.
What does it do then?
Acts as a frequency amplifier and broadcaster for the whole Saturn system, maybe an energy portal, and also, possibly, a calling card. A deliberate, undeniable sign of intelligent design on a planetary scale. It also supposedly emits periodic energy pulses.
You connected the hexagon to cymatics earlier, how patterns emerge from frequency. That seems spot on based on this.
Lacerta confirms that connection is direct and intentional. Cymatics shows how frequency organizes matter visually. The hexagon, she claims, is the visible signature of a complex frequency being generated and broadcast from Saturn. It's like a planet-sized cymatic device. The principle is frequency shapes geometry, and she claims ancient human civilizations knew this very well.
So they had ways to deal with it. Symbols, geometry.
Yes. The source states these ancient forms weren't just art, they were consciousness technology. She gives examples. The Sri Yantra from Vedic tradition described as a field coherence barrier against frequencies like Saturn's. The flower of life pattern found everywhere, supposedly a field harmonizer, transmuting disruptive frequencies.
What else?
The Ankh from Egypt, a frequency resonator, strengthening the connection between physical and non-physical. The Aegis-Nalmer, that helm of awe ruined from Norse tradition, a field projector that counteracts limiting frequencies, maybe interacting specifically with Saturn's six-sided pattern. Even Native American medicine wheels, aligned with astronomy for protective energetic effects.
And how would you use these, according to the source? Just look at them.
Lacerta suggests practical stuff. Placing a Sri Yantra in your space says it creates a 3-4 meter protective field. Wearing or carrying the flower of life. Meditating on these forms, maybe using specific breathing like 4-7-8. Using materials known to interact with energy, copper, silver, gold. The key, she insists, isn't magic. It's math and physics, consciousness tech. And understanding how they work, interacting with them consciously, increases their effectiveness. She claims the suppression of this ancient knowledge was deliberate to keep the control systems working effectively.
This source paints a picture of, well, a cosmic landscape where technology, ancient and modern, isn't just physical. It's energetic, potentially influencing our consciousness, our reality, even our afterlife. So what does this all mean? It suggests our environment, from satellites in orbit right down to our own minds, might be a much more engineered space than we usually think, with incredibly deep roots and very modern expressions.
It really forces you to consider the possibility, doesn't it? That forces beyond our everyday perception might be actively shaping our reality, our consciousness, using everything from ancient cosmic structures like planets and moons to modern satellite grids.
So to recap, we've journeyed through this really radical narrative from the Lacerta source. Ancient alien creators, the Illojim, hidden reptilian civilizations native to Earth, conflict spanning millions of years, planetary structures like the moon being engineered, maybe influencing life and death, modern tech like satellite grids potentially serving hidden goals of surveillance, even consciousness control, and all counterbalanced by claims of ancient human wisdom about energy and form deliberately suppressed.
And this deep dive into the Lacerta source, remembering it's framed within UFO mythology and conspiracy theory, it gives us this unique lens, a way to consider really big ideas about reality, history, our own potential. It definitely prompts you to think about the energy around us, unseen influences, and maybe, as the source suggests, the power of our own awareness, our own intention in navigating whatever this complex landscape actually is.
And remember, all through this, we're just exploring the claims and the narrative presented within this specific source material. Our whole goal is just to understand the ideas it contains, not to say this is true or this isn't true.
It provides a framework, definitely unconventional, maybe challenging for some, but a framework for thinking about some truly profound questions about our existence, the nature of reality itself.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to take away, building on what the source claims. If even a tiny fraction of these ideas about an engineered reality, about suppressed human abilities, if any of that were true, what hidden capabilities might be lying dormant inside your own consciousness right now, waiting to be woken up through awareness, through discernment, through intentional practice?
Keep questioning, keep exploring, keep making those connections as you navigate all the information streams out there.
Until the next deep dive.